I lost 4.5 stone before I picked up a single weight, and when I finally started, I realised the order I'd done it in was the only reason it worked. Because I tried the gym first, years ago, 5 sessions a week. The weight didn't shift, it went up. Same food, more exercise, worse results. And I couldn't understand why. Turns out I had the sequence completely backwards. I'm Neil. I've been tracking my blood tests, my weight and my body composition for over 2 years now. All of it. In the next 9 minutes, I'll show you what the sequence actually looks like in practice. Why metabolic repair has to come before resistance training if you want the training to actually work. And what happened to my cholesterol when I finally added the weights. Because that result genuinely surprised me. And if your body isn't responding to exercise the way you'd expect, the sequence might be why. 3 things. First, what I was doing wrong for years and the blood test results that told me the gym wasn't the problem, my metabolism was. Second, why I actually started resistance training, what I started with and why the timing mattered more than the program. And third, what happened to my body composition and one blood marker my GP specifically commented on after 14 months of doing it in the right order. Let's start with a rucksack, 28 kilos and what it represents. The myth. And it's a reasonable one. I believed it for most of my adult life. Go to the gym, get moving, burn the calories. That's how you fix your weight, fix your health, fix the numbers on the blood test. More exercise equals better results. It's in every NHS leaflet, every GP conversation about lifestyle, every January advert for a gym membership. And it makes sense. More output, less stored. Simple maths. I'd go further. I used to think it was the most important variable, that if you could just get yourself through the gym doors often enough, the rest would follow. Food, weight, energy, all of it. Exercise was the lever. Pull it hard enough and everything else moves. Professor Stuart Phillips, one of the world's leading muscle researchers, describes muscle as a metabolic organ in its own right, not just tissue for lifting things, a biological system that pulls glucose out of the blood, drives insulin sensitivity, controls how your body handles fuel. His framing, the more muscle you have, the more efficient you become at managing blood sugar. Not as a side effect of fitness, as a direct mechanism. Now that framing matters because it redefines what exercise is actually for, and it's a long way from burn calories, lose weight. Here's what I now know from my own data. The gym first approach didn't fail because exercise was wrong. It failed because I was asking exercise to do a job it can't do on its own. When your metabolism is broken, when insulin is elevated, when your cells aren't responding properly, when you're running on glucose and crashing every afternoon, exercise is fighting against that, not with it. I didn't figure that out by reading about it. I figured it out because I did the gym first, got worse, and then eventually did the metabolism first and got better. Let me give you the timeline, because the timeline is the point. My 30s, 5 gym sessions a week at points, weights, cardio, the lot. By my 40s, I'd stopped. Not because I gave up, because it genuinely wasn't working and life got in the way. The weight kept creeping up regardless. By December 2023, Boxing Day specifically, I was 18 stone. That's 252 pounds. 6 medications, statins, estimide, alpurinol, asthma inhalers, allergy tablets, 2 different cholesterol drugs simultaneously, and my blood reflected it. December 2023, total cholesterol 8. That's the highest it had ever been, higher than before I went on medication in the first place. On dual cholesterol therapy, 2 drugs, both supposed to be bringing that number down. But here's the one that really matters for today. HDL cholesterol, the so-called good cholesterol, the one that's supposed to be high. In 2012, before any of this, my HDL was 1.6. Over 11 years on statins, it fell. 1.51 in 2016, 1.33 in 2020, 1.3 by December 2023. That's not a dramatic collapse, but it's a consistent downward trend across the entire period that I was on medication. That December 2023 cholesterol to HDL ratio, 6.15, the target is under 5. I was 23% above it while on medication, while doing everything I was supposed to be doing. What I was not doing was resistance training. What I was doing was basically nothing in terms of structured movement. No gym, no weights, very occasional walking. I thought the medication was handling the metabolic side of things. The blood test said otherwise. This is the before. 18 stone, 6 medications, HDL falling for 11 years, ratio well outside target, no meaningful movement, and the assumption that the drugs were covering it. Boxing Day 2023 is when I changed everything, but not the exercise, not yet. The first thing I changed was the fuel. Fasting, non-UPF food, eating window compressed. I also did a 10-day water fast and then a 17-day water fast to kick things off. That was December 2023 through to spring 2024. Mid-February 2024, I stopped all medications. The dietary changes came right after. What I started with, movement-wise, was walking. Just that. 6,000 steps a day consistently from Boxing Day 2023 onwards. No gym, no weights, just walking every day, whatever the weather. That was for the first 12 months. January 2025 is when I introduced resistance training, and I want to be clear about what that looked like because it wasn't a gym and it wasn't complicated. Weighted squats with a rucksack, some dumbbell work, 3 sessions a week. That's it. Nothing heroic. No program, no coach, no 6 days a week commitment, just 3 sessions consistently from January 2025 onwards. The reason for the sequence matters. I needed the metabolic repair to happen first. Fasting and real food lowered insulin, improved blood sugar, dropped the weight from 18 stone towards 13. Walking kept me moving without stressing a symptom that was already under pressure. The resistance training came in once the metabolic foundation was in place, when the body was ready to respond to the signal rather than fighting it. That's not a theory I had in advance. That's what I worked backwards to from the data. April 2025, 14 months after stopping statins and starting the dietary changes, 3 months into the resistance training, my HDL 1.5, up from 1.3 in December 2023. That's a 15% increase after 11 years of falling. First time it had moved in the right direction in over a decade. Cholesterol-to-HDL ratio 4.7, down from 6.15, within target for the first time since 2016. That's not close to target, that's in it. My GP looked at the result and asked if I'd gone back on statins. I hadn't, he knew that. It was more of a, that's not what I expected to see kind of question. The HDL specifically seemed to catch his attention because HDL doesn't usually move that much, that quickly, without a pharmaceutical reason. Now, I want to be honest about the weight picture because it's not a straight line. I hit 13 stone 7 around the middle of 2025. That's my lowest since my 30s. Total loss of 4.5 stone from 18. Christmas happened, things drifted a bit. I got less consistent with the steps and the resistance work, and right now I'm sitting at 13.12. 5 pounds up from that low. Not where I want to be, but here's what I know about that. The drift coincided exactly with a reduction in movement. The fasting and food stayed broadly right. The walking went below 6,000 steps consistently. It's been a wet winter. The resistance sessions have dropped off and the weight has crept back. That is the data. I'm not going to frame that as anything other than what it is. When my movement drops, the body responds. I'm rebuilding the steps. I'm back now over the 6,000 consistently, and the resistance sessions are back. The pattern is clear in both directions. And there's this. October 2025, day 10 of a reset, I loaded a rucksack with 28 kilos and did 100 weighted squats. 28 kilos is 4.5 stone. That is the weight, a little bit more than the weight that I'd lost. Every rep was carrying the weight my knees used to carry every single day for years, just from standing up, walking to the car, going upstairs. I'm not going to make that overly dramatic, but it landed differently than expected. That weight felt enormous after 50 reps, and that used to be just me. That was my body. 13 years of NHS blood tests, the actual numbers, the GP conversations, what changed and what didn't. If you want to follow someone who documents this properly rather than just talks about it, that's what this channel is. Subscribe. if that's going to be useful to you. 4 things from this, what the data suggests. In my case, the sequence mattered as much as the intervention. Resistance training, when my metabolism was broken, insulin elevated, body running on glucose, weight at 18 stone, produced nothing. The same body, after 14 months of fasting and dietary change, responded to resistance training with a 15% HDL increase and a body composition shift that the scale doesn't fully capture. This is one person's data, n equals 1. But the before and after are from the same person, the same GP, the same NHS lab. The sequence is in there. None of this means don't exercise. The NHS guidance to move more is right. Walking is right. Resistance training is right. If you're carrying no metabolic dysfunction, normal blood sugar, healthy weight, no insulin issues, then the gym first approach probably works fine. The conventional advice is built for the average case, not my case. What it misses is the subset of people for whom exercise isn't working. Not because they're lazy or not trying hard enough, but because they're trying to use exercise to solve a metabolic problem that exercise alone can't fix. That's the group the sequencing matters for. And here's the thing worth knowing if you're not yet in a clinical conversation about any of this. The mechanism, the way the body responds differently to exercise, depending on insulin sensitivity and metabolic state, it shows up in the data years before anyone puts a diagnosis on it. The gym not working the way it should, body composition not shifting despite the effort, energy low after sessions rather than high, those aren't fitness failures. They're often the same mechanism earlier. Worth understanding before the GP conversation happens rather than after. If you're on cholesterol medication and you're curious about your own HDL or ratio numbers, the conversation to have is with your GP, not instead of that conversation, with it. Please don't change medication because a bloke on YouTube did. Change it because your GP agrees the data supports it. If you want to go deeper on the cholesterol and HDL side of this, specifically total cholesterol versus the ratio, which is the number that actually matters, I've got a free guide in the description. The 7-day fasting blueprint covers the metabolic foundation side of things, what changes first, what the blood tests tend to show, and how fasting and real food interact with the markers your GP is tracking. The link is in the description and it's free. And remember, this is educational content only. It is not medical advice. Never stop or change medication without your GP's supervision. Please speak to your GP before changing your fasting pattern, diet or medication.